We set out to build a bike that was fun to ride, you know, just at the core of being a mountain biker and the terrain that most people have access to today. We wanted a bike that climbed well, descended well. We love the characteristics of big bikes, yet a lot of today's modern big bikes, enduro bikes, can be a lot of bike for a lot of places that people ride. We wanted those characteristics, but we didn't need this huge beast of a bike out of it. And we feel like that's what we've ended up with, is a bike that has these mannerisms of a 160 bike with less travel. It's not like we set out and said, okay, the bike is going to have 115 millimeters of wheel travel. We really set out and assigned certain parameters, and one of those key parameters for us is chainstay length, because obviously chainstay length can really dictate what that bike feels like, you know, especially when you combine with a long front center. You know, there is such a thing as too short of chainstays.
Absolutely.
And they're certainly too long. And when you identify that range, identify how big of a tire you want in the bike, that starts to really dictate how big the forgings are and the lower link location and the lower pivot location. Once we start putting all of those hard points in, that really tells us how much travel we're going to get. And so we played with some bikes that were a little bit more travel, but the chainstay length was a little bit longer. And as we were also simultaneously, we were playing with these reduced fork offsets and changes to the reach and the head angle, we ended up at this what we would call this happy place, this fun place with 435 chainstays. And it just so happened to be that that gave us 115 millimeters of rear travel.
One of the big things I guess we've all been talking about the past 2 days is the handling of the 29-inch bike and how it feels, dare I say, a lot like a 27.5. I guess the one thing that everyone's talking about is the fork offset, so I guess maybe that's a good place to start.
New Trance 29 is using a 44 fork offset, and we played with a number of different ones. Some of the first mules we built were using a traditional 51 offset. We played with 46, 44, 42, and we ended up settling on 44. When we prototype different versions, we would build a size run. So a size run being small, medium, large, extra large, so we could see them under various testers. And we tried different offset, and they're like, okay, well that's what that feels like, and that's what that feels like. And we just went through that process until we came to a happy place, or what we call a fun place.
Fun place. I can definitely feel on the trail the bike doesn't behave like a stereotypical 29er or even a 29er trail bike. I mean, that's just another thing altogether. But like we spoke about previously, it's not just about, you know, the offset fork. There has to be other the elements in that process to make the whole thing work.
Yeah, definitely. You know, when you are developing a bike, you know, everything you change affects something else. So you're really chasing all of those things, and what you're trying to not do is create another problem. You're trying to solve problems without creating additional problems. And you know, the geometry, we ended up, the very early bikes we built were using traditional geometry, 51 fork offsets, maybe shorter reaches, and you know, they were fine bikes and actually certainly in line with some of the other bikes from other brands on the market today. But we were really looking for a bike that spoke to us in a different way in terms of how it felt on the trail, something that was really, really broad in its range of versatility.
Great. So this bike is actually slacker than 27.5.
Yeah, it sure is, and it's slacker than other similar bikes in the market. So what we did was really, with that reduced fork offset, it allowed us to go slacker and head angle, and then we extended the reach, and that really, what we found is you were steering the bike with your hips more. You know, the bike became less twitchy. yet it still climbed well. We've got a bike that we feel like climbs well and descends well above its class. So we certainly don't want people to look at that rear travel number and get scared off, because as you probably felt with the bike and the work we've done with our suspension partners, it doesn't feel like a 115 bike as well. And that's a huge thing.
It's interesting as well that we rode the same trails that you guys used to showcase the rain, and I don't think anyone was struggling, and the terrain was seriously chunky. Yeah, there were places where, maybe 10, 15 mil more travel would have been good, but I guess, that the handling combined with the big wheels, and it's making that bike fun. This is like an interesting turning point for the trail bike, I guess, with these modern geometry and modern numbers.
Agree, and we really feel like we've built, in this case, the next generation modern trail bike. And the tires we rode, we were riding 2-3 tires on 30 mil inner width carbon rims, and you can put a proper big 2.5 on this thing, and it takes that capability up even more.